A mob thrashed an army man during a protest over a braid chopping incident in Kupwara district of the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir on Tuesday. The local residents have beaten up the soldier in Reddy Chaub Kibal area, alleging that he was involved in the braid chopping incident. Earlier, 12 persons were injured when the security forces opened at the protesters who pelted the army vehicle during the protest in the area. 7 other protesters, including women, also suffered pellets injuries in the subsequent clashes. And for more on this story, I am joined from the studio by our political editor, Kartikeya Sharma. Thank you very much, Kartikeya, for joining us on the broadcast. So there are about 40 cases of braid chopping registered in Jammu and Kashmir. How frequent is this, and is it actually something which happens, or what we are seeing is a case of public hysteria?
I think it's a case of public hysteria. A policeman, army personnel being attacked is not something which we say is new in Kashmir. A police personnel was killed when he was coming out of a mosque because people felt that he was trying to take the photo. He was doing his job. People felt that he was being intrusive, but he was doing a job of taking the photographs. He was taking photographs of the people who were trying to incite a mob. Or, for example, when twice it has happened. In one occasion, when a lieutenant had gone back to his village to attend a wedding, he was killed by the terrorists. Similarly, during non-operation, non-duty days, when policemen are being attacked in the Kashmir Valley, is representative of a new phenomena, or I would say new curve of violence. Again, to attack the forces directly goes on to show the sort of work which the security has to do under the harm's way. So when a lot of people make big hue and cry about issues in terms of, for example, in the Gogoi's case, in context of human right, the other aspect has to be conceded, and that too, that the sometimes extraordinary situation requires an extraordinary measure. I'm not saying that the extraordinary measure has to be violent in nature, but then if a slightly hard-handed approach, if it protects more life, works better for the army.
And Kartikeya, I'm told that we are also joined by Mr. Raj Kadian, who's a defense expert. Thank you very much for joining us on the broadcast. So this case of a mob thrashing a policeman comes out of the accusation against him that the mob made that he was actually involved in a case of braid chopping. Is this any way the sign of a high level of tension and frustration against the Indian security forces in Kashmir?
From the news that I've been told, I have not watched the television today, is that one of the army soldiers has been beaten up by some civilians or some ruffians. Is that correct?
Yes, exactly. That's correct.
Okay.
That happened because he was accused of braid chopping, sir.
Yes, it is very distressing. I would like to remind everybody that the soldiers are not tourists. They are there in the valley to protect the country, to protect the civilians against terrorists, not out of choice, but against their consent, without their consent, and quite possibly against their will. They are doing a duty. And the army cannot tolerate this kind of misbehavior, no matter who is in the wrong. If somebody is in the wrong, even if a soldier is in the wrong, the army has a system of taking action against him, and they always do. But any civilian who has taken the law in his own hand runs the risk. No commanding officer will tolerate this kind of misbehavior against the soldiers. So tomorrow, if something wrong happens, it will be entirely I don't think it is the local civilians who are involved. There may be some ruffians who want to create the problem. But that cannot happen unless the civilians also are kind of giving them support, even if it is passive. So it should be a warning that no commanding officer can afford to accept this kind of misbehavior by anybody against his soldiers, and I don't think it should be accepted. Strict action needs to be taken. Otherwise, tomorrow, if the soldiers, they're all armed, they are also angry, they are, as it is, being pelted with stones repeatedly in the performance of the duties. But this kind of manhandling does take place. I am again saying, no matter who is in the wrong, let the law find out. If the soldier is in the wrong, the army will punish him.
Right.
But nobody has a right to hurt a soldier or manhandle him, otherwise there are serious consequences.
Sir, isn't there also a little bit of a danger in Kashmir, because the people may think that the Indian Army or the police forces who are deployed in Kashmir enjoy a sort of sense of impunity, therefore the mob is acting on their own. Why is that happening?
No, in all areas where the army operates in aid of civil authorities, there is because army is the visible face of the government. The policy makers are not seen on the ground, the soldiers are seen. So they are taken as a symbol of the state, and any perceived perception, it is blamed on the soldiers. But soldiers only perform their duties most impartially, most compassionately. I can say this with long personal experience of having operated in these areas. My point is that if anybody is not happy with them, he can make a report to the commanding officer, make a police report. The army has a system of dealing with any errant behavior, and they deal with it very, very promptly and very, very strictly. So leave it to the army, but anybody, I don't think it's the general public, I'm repeating it, is involved. It is maybe some miscreants who want to create the problem. But anybody who is involved in a local area, they run the risk of retaliation by soldiers, because it cannot be an acceptable behavior to act against the soldiers in this manner.
Thank you very much, sir. And one more question I have for you. How is it possible for the army to recover a relation with the Kashmiri population? What has the army to do, if the army actually has something to do in order to recover the relation, a good relation with the Kashmiri population?
The good relations, I think army has got a tremendous record. They are running clinics, they are running 42 goodwill schools where the children of the Kashmiris are taught at very, very subsidized, even if not free rates. They build roads, they build infrastructure in areas where the civil administration finds difficult to have access. Army does all that. The amount of work that the army does, they don't publicize. They are a silent force. But it is well known that the amount of social work that the army does is enormous, which is not part of their main duty, but then they do it. So there is no question of any laxity or anybody complaining on lack of. I have operated, we build bus stands, we build schools, we build roads,
Right.
we build playgrounds, everything is done. We treat them free of cost. They are even given access to canteen goods and facilities in the remote area, they are provisioned.
Right.
So it is not a question. This couldn't have been because the army is not making sincere efforts in winning what we call heart and minds of the people. But then it is a reciprocal arrangement. You can't have one-sided, the soldier does everything for you, and
Right.
we go around and misbehave with it. That is not acceptable.